I don't know of anybody who says, okay, I'm ready to start my practice. Oh, okay. Here's 28-figure clear liability cases and a line of credit for $10 million in a palatial office and wonderfully trained staff that are going to help you in every way. That doesn't happen. Every one of us has started out of our house. Yeah, I did.
Welcome to Bad Law, Worst Facts. I'm your host, Michael Takla. Today I have Michael Alder on. He's going to talk to us about being uncomfortable. Mike, how you doing today?
Good.
Man, I really like your story. You have really gotten out of your comfort zone when it comes to doing types of cases, and then you become the guy that everybody wants to call for these types of cases. And it's not only that. I mean, you look at your I found you on Instagram. Your Instagram content is fantastic. Not only are you trying to give back to young lawyers, I think you even have the Trial Lawyer Bible that you give out for free to attorneys. And I'll put a link below for that as well too. I mean, I think you have a real good understanding that the practice of law can be absolutely terrifying, and you've got to really just kind of be the man to read it and to go forward with it.
Well, and luckily it is terrifying. Because if it wasn't terrifying, then we'd have to compete with everybody in the whole world to do it. This is a blessing to be able to do this. But the reason that it's hard is why we get paid as much as we do, why we have the opportunities that we do. So I look at something that's scary and terrifying as kind of a good thing, because if I can get through it, when I get through it, I'm ahead of 95% of all the people who stopped at, well, that's terrifying, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. What's look, let's talk about, you and I were talking a little bit off air about this this toxic tort that you did up in California. Tell me about that. I mean, tell me a little bit about the facts. And this was not something you've done before, right?
No,
yeah.
I started my practice in personal injury. I worked for people who did only personal injury work. I started my own practice in 2000, 24 years ago, doing personal injury. That's what I know. That's what I tried. I don't even know, probably 75 personal injury cases. And then because I know how to try a case, I got into employment when somebody said, hey, you want to try an employment case? And I'm like, I don't know crap about employment. I've now tried 8 of them, won them all, and gotten punitives in 7 of them. I mean, I'm like, oh, but that was really just a function of, I could say, I don't know anything about employment law. That's not my gig. I'm going to, I don't want to spread myself. I could come up with all of the reasons why I don't want to step into that discomfort. When I did, now I have an employment practice, right? Now I have that. So the same thing happened to me about 2 years ago. A kind of a California firm, but they work nationwide, representing municipalities, not in personal injury toxic work, but to recover contamination, remediation, and cleanup costs around the country. And the firm had a trial lawyer and a environmental law professor writer, and the trial lawyer had a very serious medical issue. And so they had this need for a trial lawyer. And so I got approached from a friend of a friend, and I interviewed and did all that. But here's the thing. Hey, Mike, have you ever done toxic tort? No. Do you know anything about toxic torts? No. I need you to try 25 cases, including the bellwether, for 25 different dry cleaning sites in the city of Modesto, in San Francisco. Oh, by the way, the 3 firms against you are 3 of the largest firms in the world. And this is a 22-year litigation. You in? Here it comes, right? God, I don't know that. I'm uncomfortable. That's an obstacle. What if I fail? God, I hope nobody finds out when I lose. All of the things that can come up that are what we all call discomfort, right? Difficulty. But my philosophy and my beautiful wife's philosophy, we're talking, and she's like, don't you practice what you preach? You talk about stepping outside of that discomfort is where you grow and whatever. And so I did practice what I preach. I jumped in and I said, let's go for it. I know that I know what I'm doing in the courtroom, and I am smart enough to know what to talk to the jury about. So, long story short, we get involved, we go through, they start teaching me about the intricacies of perchloroethylene and the chemical. I'm like, nope, 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 hold on. I got to tell a jury who doesn't know anything about this. I mean, the Vados bone zone. And I'm like, oh. But what I did was I learned enough to know how to communicate to a jury. And sure enough, we did the very first trial. Bellwether got a $60 million verdict, right? Suddenly 25 cases become worth, $1 billion. That stepping outside of my comfort zone now has led me to a whole part of my firm that 2 years ago was not even on my radar. I mean, I've represented the state of New Jersey, maybe Maryland, depending on what, Puerto Rico, different municipalities have called, all because of that initial decision to step into challenge as a challenge, not let an obstacle be in the way, but that obstacle became the way for me to develop this part of my practice. Now, I still do everything else, but God, what a great side gig. And the people are amazing. And all the people that I deal with, all the lawyers are a different type of lawyer, different caliber of lawyer, right? The defense filed a motion every single day for a month in our trial, right? It's like, that doesn't happen in a rear ender. It just,
It does not.
you're like, what? And then we try the second case, and there's 50,000 motions to prevent me from doing all the things I did in the first trial that they thought was effective. It's just like a constant war. But what a wonderful challenge to do that for a month. Now I did a second one. Now we're about to do the third one in April. It's great.
One thing that you kind of, I think you touched on was when you got this call, the first thing was like, and this is, I would say like R-rated podcast, right? Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Like, I don't know. I don't think I can do it. I mean, were you ever thinking like, look, the law is the law. I'll have to figure that part out, but I do know rules of evidence, and I know that how to put on a play, right? Like, I know how to put on a trial. I know how to do that. So as long as I know how to do that, let's do it. Is that the kind of mindset you were in?
Yeah, but you see, it's more complicated than that, right? Because if I'm going to devote months, I'm going to move away for a month at a time. If I'm going to devote months and months and months of effort to digest some portion of the 400,000 pieces of paper, that takes away from my other practice, right? I've got 6 kids, as the youngest is 7 months. These are all commitments. And all of those things make it a lot easier for us to self-talk ourselves out of stepping into that challenge. And, I had the wonderful advantage as well of having a woman who is a lawyer who's like, you know what? I got it. You go do your thing, right? This is how we pay the bills. This is how we, and we're both true to what we put on our Instagram and on our social media and how we live our lives. And that's a real benefit. That's a significant benefit for me.
Talk to me about the first years as you as a lawyer. I mean, was there a lot of being uncomfortable there, and how did you kind of fight with that? And maybe we can even go into talking about you're starting your own law firm. As someone who just started their own law firm, there's a lot of uncomfortable times where I'm trying to figure things out. But it's a blessing every day, right? But kind of talk to me about those struggles and how you dealt with that.
So when I got out of law school at LSU, I kind of talked my way onto a clerkship for the Mississippi Supreme Court, knowing that I was going to move to Los Angeles the next year because my then wife, my first wife, was had dead set on being an entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles. And she had the grades, and I helped her get to the top of the class right through. Um, well, when I went into the clerkship, I really had no clue what kind of law I wanted to practice. And it was only meeting an incredible justice on the Mississippi Supreme Court, a guy named Chuck McCrae, who was a plaintiff's lawyer, where hearing him talk about war stories and how he made a difference, that I decided I wanted to do that. But look, this is real stuff. I started interviewing in Los Angeles, having really never been west of Houston until I was like 25. And I was like 0 for 7 in interviews, right? The guy who offered me a job was in his kind of at the end of his career, a former trial god, but at the end of his career, he offered me a job. I accepted. He's like, well, I haven't told you how much you paid. And I'm like, I need a job, sir. I'm good. Right? Literally. So when I practiced, and then I took the bar in California, I passed Louisiana bar. I took the bar, like I moved here in whatever, August, took the February bar. But during that first year and a half, when I was at his firm, I didn't know. I mean, you don't know anything. I mean, you literally know nothing. Law school does not prepare you for any kind of practice of law, no matter what. So, every one of us has struggles. I remember going to court for the first time being scared shitless. I remember that first depo. I remember people making fun of me at depo when I didn't know how to craft a question. And I still remember that when I see newer lawyers, right? They're not younger, by the way, because if you have young lawyers, that means I'm an old lawyer. So they're newer lawyers and I'm less new. But it really infuriates me when I see especially older men with young women who are trying their first case or their first depo. That happens a lot. In fact, I just associated into a case with a woman who is being abused by these jackasses. And I'm doing the case for free just to kind of help her navigate it. And it stopped. But I remember that. We all have been the first at everything. Anything that we do in our entire life, there's a first time for it. And so that idea of if you're worried about X, Y, Z, if you're worried about if you can do it and getting through it and not looking foolish and not, everybody has done it. Everybody has felt that way. Everybody has gone through that embarrassment, that difficulty. Every one of us at some point gets yelled at by a judge, it's not merited, especially if you're a federal court practice, right?
Yeah.
You're like, how did you become this horrible person, right? You're a terrible person. I mean, what happened to you? So we all go through that. And that same thing when you start your own practice, right? Right? Very few people, well, I don't know of anybody who says, okay, I'm ready to start my practice. Oh, okay. Here's 28-figure clear liability cases and a line of credit for $10 million in a palatial office and wonderfully trained staff that are going to help you in every way. That doesn't happen, right? That has to be, every one of us has started out of our house. Yeah, I did, right? I started with one case after getting essentially fired from my job, quitting job. It was time to go. I started in this place that in a building in Los Angeles that's since been torn down, had a mailbox, et cetera, that allowed it to call suite. So I was in suite 101 on Ventura Boulevard in the Valley, with one case, no employees, and you build and you build and you build. And on my social media, I talk about that hustle and about how to get cases and about how to develop a network and about how to continuously work towards developing relationships. And the biggest thing I've learned, or one of the things I've learned, is that consistent behavior over time and making things easier by making them routine in the things that will help our practices is the key of That means connecting with people. And, I tell this to my law class at Loyola, to everybody. It's well known that most sales happen between the 7th and the 12th contact. Well known, right? It's studied by the Sales Association. Most salespeople stop after 3. And that's really a function of not wanting to hear no. And then when you see no, you then identify as a failure. That hurts too much and you stop. So the idea about sales equally applies to getting referrals, that equally applies to getting business, to getting opportunities. If you touch a relationship over time, the longer you do it, the higher the chance is that when they need you, they will respond to you. I compete with probably 10 guys in LA for all the big stuff, right?
Right.
If I get a referral, any one of the 10 of us is going to kill it. Why would they refer it to me? I thought, well, because they're waiting to work with the great Mike Alder. That's a bunch of crap. That's just not true, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I'd say the 99% of the time, they have a need to refer a case. And whoever one of us is more recent in their mind, that's who they
Top of
refer
mind.
to. So that
Yeah.
connection over time requires consistent execution and a willingness not to stop doing it because you think you're failing, right? Because you just never know those seeds that are sowing. And so, that's what I did when I opened my practice. Back then, 2000, there's no internet, right? There's no, the internet started, but there's no Google, there's no email, there's no texts, right?
We're nothing like we are today,
Right.
right? We're not doing a podcast over stream in 2 different states.
But same concept, right?
Yeah.
You and I are from the South, right? We were taught you write a handwritten note when you get a gift for a birthday or a holiday or whatever, right? I grew up just writing notes, thank you notes, whatever. So when I came out to LA and I'm writing people notes, and look, I got my stationery, I still got it right here on my desk. It's habitual, right? So I pulled out the yellow pages. And there are about 200 firms that advertised in the yellow pages for personal injury. I wrote every one of them a personal note. Just a very simple kiss their ass. You're the pinnacle of the plaintiff's firm in Los Angeles. Then you say something about yourself. I just left so-and-so's office. I'm ready, hungry. I'll try anything that moves. But then you have to ask for something. I see so many people that they're uncomfortable to ask for stuff and they lose that opportunity, right? You're never going to get something unless you ask for it. So I always end with, is there any way that I could take you to coffee or to lunch and just listen to you and learn? Right now, can we Zoom? Can we FaceTime? Just to learn, right? 200 of those notes I sent. 4 people responded. 1 person referred me some small case. But wait, did I just fail 199 times? Well, I took 199 shots because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I planted 199 seeds that are yet to germinate. Now, fast forward 4 years. If I had looked at those as 199 failures, maybe I wouldn't be where I was 4 years later. I won the Los Angeles Trial Lawyer of the Year, youngest guy ever to win it. Now I go to the legal conventions and I'm not writing notes out of the yellow pages. I'm the man, right? Everybody wants to talk to me.
Everybody's writing you notes now, huh?
And I remember very clearly being at the annual convention and somebody came up and introduced somebody. Hey, have you met our new trial lawyer of the year, Mike Alder? And the guy said, no, we hadn't met, but didn't you write me a note like 4 years ago? Sure enough, right? That seed is always there. Turns out that guy wound up being one of my better referral sources later on. And then you think about all of the opportunities that we have. That toxic tort case, A friend of a friend referred me. Why did they refer me as opposed to any other phenomenal trial lawyers that are out there? It could have been because I wrote them a note and it's sitting on the corner of their desk. It could have been that they have a copy of my book and it's sitting there. It could have been that I'm just nice to them. It could have been a number of reasons. And so that idea of you just do it, you give, you help, you do it consistently, you do it without the need for consideration back. You do it, unconditionally, and you never stop. That's the secret. That's the secret. Not only to good business, but more importantly, it's a secret to good life. It's good karma, you know? It's just a way to live.
Yeah, an attorney told me the other day, the less I thought about myself, the more I thought about other people, the more my law firm's been blessed. I was like, man, that hit home. And
1000% correct. I know
yeah,
that. I can see that very easily.
yeah, and it kind of put the cherry on top of this conversation. I had a case a few years ago where someone called me and they're like, hey, I think there's no insurance for either case or either driver. This is what's going on. No firm will even get past talking to me. I was like, well, let me know what's going on. I spoke to them. I was like, well, I ordered a police report for you. Don't worry about anything, but you're right. There is no insurance. There's no avenue of recovery here. There's nothing that we can do. Um, they're like, you have been phenomenal. You spent 30 minutes for me. Come 2 years later, one of the biggest cases I ever worked on, guess who referred it to me?
Yep.
That person was like, you need to call this guy.
Of course. Right. There's a lot of examples like that. And that was out of that was because you showed who you were, and who you were allowed you to do that without thinking of all the reasons why it was a waste of time, not worth your time, etc. That comes back a thousandfold. You know, hell, I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up, my dad was a preacher. He's like, you just give unconditionally. It will come back to you a thousandfold. And that's one of my firm mottos, actually, to give unconditionally, ask for nothing back, and you'll get back a thousandfold. And you're a perfect example, right? You didn't get anything back, you probably didn't expect anything back. And then look what happened. Look what happened, right? Now you got to watch out for the users. I've learned that even though you're unconditionally giving, there are some people that will just continue to take, take, take. And when I identify those people, I cut them out. I get it. But you got to go a long way to get on my shit list, right?
It's something that you just have to be careful of. Just know that your mindset is right, but your mindset also has people who are just not fit for the mindset, and you have to cut them out, right?
And
I think a lot of people do the opposite. I think a lot of people say, I need to change my mindset because there's a lot of users. No, 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 no. The mindset's right. It's just you just need to learn how to cut people out and know when there's a threshold where you're like, hey, I just can't accept this. And that's just generally in life, right? You want good people around you, and you keep good people around you, and you keep the same mindset.
there's, yeah, there's two different philosophies.
Yeah, that's right. Talk to me a little about, if I'm a young attorney, maybe 2 years out, I get a job at a plaintiff firm. What should I be doing? Right? Am I going to the partner for guidance, if there is one, right? Or am I reading books? What am I doing to further, like, actually further my career, right? And not be in a situation where 5 years from now I'm in the same place.
So there's plenty of information out there to learn everything you need to learn, times a billion, for all of us, right? The issue is we have 60, 70,000 thoughts a day on average, and 99% of them are the same thoughts we had the day before. And so you always have to, and again, that's scientifically true. So if you realize that you're in a rut, right? You're doing the same thing. What do I do to break that? If I'm not in a rut, but I don't know what to do, what do I do next? So the two things that I say that I look for in associates, people, staff, are not their grades or their class rank. right, is their enthusiasm and their proactivity. And that is what I believe sets people apart. Now, what am I talking about? Let's say you and you come work at my firm and you're a brand new lawyer. You've never been to a depot, or you've only been to a couple. So I say, why don't you come? You're involved in the case. Why don't you come listen to the depot? So depot goes in the depot. We get a bunch of information. We need to get their phone records, and there's 6 other people that they list that we know we're going to need to depose. Now, you could afterwards say to me, thank you for that opportunity. Or you could, without me asking you to do it, summarize the depot, list the things that need to be done, go to somebody else and get an example of draft discovery. And when you come back to me, you say, hey, I sent a summary. I would really appreciate it if you looked at it, give me some thoughts and promise. And I put together, some preliminary discovery. That says everything. You did that. I'm like, I want you on my big cases. I want you to follow me around. I want you to do whatever, because leopards don't change their spots. How we do anything is how we do everything. And a proactive, enthusiastic, think outside the box, someone who's not concerned about me yelling at them for being stupid and wasting time, but instead about putting themselves out there with a legitimate reason to try to learn and to make themselves indispensable. That person I know is going to be a trial lawyer, or a good business person. I'm going to have to keep them here by paying them a lot of money or making them a partner or whatever, because that's the kind of person that does that. And the reverse is true, right? And, that whole idea of leopards don't change their spots. I've done a whole thing on my YouTube channel and some on Instagram, my Alder Talk YouTube channel, about insurance companies and how they have figured out how to determine what kind of leopard lawyers are, because they know leopards don't change their spots by, just like I would know what kind of leopard you are by the way you're acting here tells me that you're also going to do this, 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 and this. And so, lawyers that don't file till right before the statute, or don't follow up on discovery objections, who make a policy demand but then leave it and don't go over the policy. People who still talk to a pre-lit adjuster when on a rear end case, the adjuster says, well, your client stopped too early, it's 20% at fault, and they still keep the case in pre-litigation. That happens well, carriers they statistically have followed this. I know this because my managing attorney used to run Farmers Insurance in California. It's like, we know if they do this, and this, statistically, they're going to fold. They're not going to, we can lowball them. And the converse is true. Mike, we knew if we didn't treat you with respect and we said anything that was silly, you would file and serve and you'd be taking my guy's depot in a month. That tells us everything. And they figure out who's who. And so if you're getting crappy little offers, it's probably because you're unintentionally telegraphing different things to the carrier that put you in a category. And I always tell this to newer lawyers who are like, yeah, but I got good excuses. My client's still treating. I had COVID. I did. Statistically, the carriers don't care, because most of the time that's bullshit. Now, once in a blue moon, it's not. But statistically, the carriers don't offer money to those lawyers because more likely than not, overwhelmingly, that's the kind of lawyer they are. The same with when you're a newer lawyer at a firm. How do you break out of that? How do you think about, right? Asking for help, but doing some work beforehand, right? Reading my trial lawyer's Bible before you come and ask me a question, right? Not expecting to just walk in and sit down in the partner's office and say, okay, teach me. Doing some investigation, and again, I can just tell you by interviewing people all the time, when they come in and are like, on your YouTube channel, you were talking on one of the episodes about that, that, and that. Did you mean that? I'm like, get over here. You're working for my ass, right? But that shows everything about proactivity, about enthusiasm. And that's more important than right out of the box, you can do X, Y, or Z.
So, there's two things I'd say about that. So the one is what you just said. I did have an interview, something like that, where I had gone through the attorney I was going to work for's like entire history, found a YouTube channel exactly like that, and I remember it was like I was trying to get the case in 27 or trying to get the work for the firm in 2017, and I was like, hey, in 2012, you had a conversation about this on YouTube, and it was like at this minute. I thought it was really interesting because X, Y, and Z. And it had something to do, I think, with like products liability or something. I don't remember. When I tell you that guy immediately called his paralegal and said, no more interviews, and just hired me on the spot, it makes a huge difference.
Of course.
Doing the work makes a huge difference.
And it's not because you've proven that you can do that. Because anybody could do that if they were directed to do that. It was because you did that without being told to do it. You recognized what was needed. You execute on it. That's what matters because consistent thinking outside the box, stepping outside of your comfort zone is what is required to be a baller in any business, in any area of the world. That's what's required. You don't just wake up and get direct deposits with unlimited great cases, right?
Right. You got to earn it.
Right. The greatest of the great in anything, right, are great. Maybe they're talented, maybe they're smart, maybe they're good looking, maybe they have family money. That's all very, very, very helpful. But I can guarantee you that the basic core foundation is the consistent execution and stepping outside your comfort zone over and over and over and over and over.
That's how you get a side gig of a $60 million verdict.
Who would have thought? I mean, right? Who would have thought? And that's the point. Most of these things that you can't anticipate, you can't dream them. I tell this all the time. I'm like, look, you meet 10 people, you put it out there 10 times, write 10 notes. 7 of them won't respond. 2 of them will probably be maybe what you thought would happen. But maybe 1 out of 10, oh, you know what? I want to introduce you to so-and-so. I think you'll really click. And that person becomes your spouse or your mentor or whatever. Okay, now do that 10 times a month. Do that 100 times a month, 10 times a week. Look at that. I got stationery that I'm working on, all right? Come on.
And for the listeners, I mean, that's a pretty thick stack of stationery. I think that would take me all day by itself.
Well, and I'm not going to write all of that, but I have it in a way with, I got a marker, I got envelopes, I got because I know that this is helpful to me. And I know that if I can make it as easy as possible for me to do it more, then I'm a step ahead. And so, 2 nights ago, we had an event and we had maybe 50 people show up. And I'm going to write all 50 people a handwritten note. Great to see you. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate you spending the time with us. Mike, that took me 30 seconds, but it's addressed by me. Oh, Mike, you're wasting your life writing notes. I'm like, no, I'm building a community. You get a holiday card that's pre-printed address. What do you do with it? Toss it in the garbage.
Trash.
Same card, handwritten address. You open it. It's because it's a thought process that we all plug into. And what it does is it shows that you give a shit. It shows that you are willing to do things that are more uncomfortable. Is it uncomfortable to address 50 envelopes as opposed to giving it to my secretary or pre-printing it on? Yeah. But it says everything.
It's kind of it's really interesting. In our industry, it really is a work in versus work out. I mean, if you put the work in, you're going to do well. I mean, barring anything crazy, you're going to do well. And so sometimes you have to reevaluate what that means. And part of it is being uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Exactly what
And
yeah.
it's really interesting that what I have noticed, at least with starting my own law firm, is that every single day is something new, and some of them could be the dumbest things, right? So I wasn't the guy writing checks. Well, now I'm the guy writing checks. So I put the checks in, I did it wrong, and it got flipped upside down. And now I'm like, I got to redo the whole thing. Okay, that's fine. What did I do? That weekend, I figured out a system where I don't have to do this very difficultly. It's very like snap of the finger. But that's okay. I didn't sit there and say, "Oh, I got to do this," and then stop and try to say it. Say they were getting cases. I thought I was so worried about getting cases. Now I'm like, hey, I need. It has to be a good litigation case. I cannot take a regular. In Texas, the minimum policy is 30, regular 30-60 case, unless I really think State Farm or Allstate are doing a really bad job, and I want to take them to the cleaners, right? And that was very quickly. So if you keep doing things that are uncomfortable, good things are going to happen. What about your first case? Trying your first case, is that terrifying?
I don't know if I'd use the word terrifying. It was, I mean, I lost the trial for sure. I don't even remember which one of the ones that I lost early on were my first case. But it took me a while to try to get to a point where I actually was able to control my heartbeat a little bit in trying. Um, I had a wonderful mentor. Some of the best trial lawyers in California have all gone through the same law firm that I did, learning. He died a couple of years ago. A guy named Michael Hughes, who was phenomenal, incredible. I mean, he got the two single plaintiff, $3 billion and $28 billion tobacco verdicts in LA back in 2002, three, four. I mean, and that was just one of a million different. But I had the benefit. But he was a very hard guy. And to my benefit, he picked you up and threw you into a trial. And I remember my first federal court trial was a medical device products liability case where my client was a professional gambler and had a penile implant that you blow up through your testicles, and he overblew it and it extruded out. And here comes the head of device litigation defense from San Francisco. So, first products case, first medical case in federal court. I'm I go to pick a jury. They go, "No, sir, we don't pick a jury here." I'm like, "Wait, what the hell?"
And the type of case is probably not the norm
And
of a
I
products
was just
liability
fresh
case.
off the tractor from Louisiana. I'm like, "Hey, what is a what?" And those are that's a true story. I mean, it gets kind of crazy silly, right? But I lost. But man, I can't. Early on, I remember losing a couple of trials, and interesting. I'm trying a case in San Diego, hopefully in about a week and a half, against a lawyer who just came in, who I tried a case when I first opened my practice, and I lost to him. And he's been a friend because he gave me some good advice. Fast forward now 24 years, and I'm retrying a case against him in a completely different context. It's really interesting because there's no substitute for just getting in the ring, right? There's no substitute. There's only so much you can learn from trial schools and trial colleges, and that's why for many of my trials, certainly most of them lately, I put out the word to allow newer lawyers to associate in as co-counsel. They have to do it for free, but I will make them part of the trial team. They try the case with me. but you learn that strategy that, okay, behind the scenes at night when you're talking about how do you decide, why did I do this, not do this, et cetera. And then when we get a good verdict, they then can put that on their website as they got a so and so trial. Because I realize that it's all about that you got to feel that stress, feel that anxiety, get through that time when the judge doesn't let it into evidence, figure out how to get around it, have your cross examination, and then the judge derails it or a witness says something you can't expect. And then you're like, and dealing with that and getting through that, that is a learned skill. It is not some God-given gift. I mean, certain people have personalities where they don't want to be in front of a jury. Got it. But if you want to do it, you can learn how to do it, right? It is a learned skill, but it requires practice.
A lot of practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. And I'm right there echoing the process of read every book. I mean, all the people we've had on my podcast, read all those books. They're great books. I read them. But I didn't realize a significance in not only the value cases I was getting, but the way I felt during depositions until I sat down, did the work, and applied it exactly how I wanted to do in my type of cases, right? And then just kind of work through it. And now I feel I have a system in place for myself that works for me. I mean, everybody's a little different. And it incorporates some of the stuff that I learned. But if I don't practice it 100 times, it's not going to be perfected. And it's just going to be just something in your mind. So I'm 100% with there. And that's awesome that you're doing that with young attorneys. I mean, the verdict alone on your website is for a young attorney is going to be huge, but more importantly, the insightfulness of how to do these type of bigger cases, understand how you do it, how you think about it, how you go through these processes is invaluable. And unless you have a mentor that you're working with that's actively actually working these cases, you're not gonna know how to do it, because it's a totally different ballgame than how a big shop with a lot of cases would do a case is much different than how someone who knows how to get a figure verdict would do a case. I mean, it's a known thing. It's not like an argument on this, right? So
I teach a class at Loyola. I'm an adjunct at Loyola here in Los Angeles on litigation strategy, procedure, et cetera. And, I tell them the biggest thing I see in newer lawyers. See, you keep saying younger. I keep saying newer. Is the singer Kenny Rogers, country singer Kenny Rogers?
Yeah.
Best life advice, but the best litigation advice ever. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And that is not only applicable in life, of course, but I see it so much in litigation. I see people fighting about special interrogatories for 9-10 months, putting all this effort in to get a watered down, objection riddled non-answer, when you could just take a depo and get it, right? I see all of this consternation over stuff that they're not producing, or they're not answering a question in the depo. And then I'm like, but 99% of the time that depo is not relevant, because it's going to settle and you're never going to need it at trial. And actually, if you go to trial and you asked a very clear question and they wouldn't answer it in the depo, that's probably better cross-examination when a jury goes, why the fuck won't you answer a question?
100%.
But you just spent motions and this asshole. You got to know what to hold. You got to know what to fold. And when you hold it, you fight to the death. But when you fold it, you don't need to do that. But that's a learned situation. And as you want to scale, as you want to do more, as you want to have a higher level of practice with more cases, more opportunities and more responsibilities, you really need to learn what's important, what you need to hold, and either delegate or fold the other stuff. And that's never going to stop in your entire life. The same goes with, your relationship with your family, your spouse, your kids, whatever, right? My wife said something that hurt my feelings the other day. She didn't realize it. And I'm like, fold. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I sure do the same thing. But then sometimes, some stuff's important. Same with everything. Friends, family, relationships, everything.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. In the short time we have left, if you can give one piece of advice to young attorneys, what would it be?
Mindset is everything. The only thing that can change events without changing the facts is your perspective. And so everything that comes up in your life, you have an opportunity to look at it a couple of different ways. And while we've all heard about the glass half empty versus the glass half full, take that to the next level. Like I told you, when you said it's terrifying, and I said, what a great thing that is. I could have said, yeah, that's a horrible thing, but that's just a change in mindset and perspective. It's terrifying. How wonderful is that? That means it's hard for most people. That means when I get through that obstacle, I'm going to have a full employment act. That means I'm going to make a lot of money because most people will stop at the terrifying thing. In everything you do, you can change your perspective. You know, God, I don't want to do that. That's an obstacle. Oh, that's an opportunity for me to get through that obstacle. And then I'm way ahead of everybody else. It's just a different way. But that mindset will always, right? This morning, I'm pissed off because I can't get the defendant to offer more than $12 million. Then I changed my mindset. I said, shit, I just got $12 million offered to it. It's totally different. The number's the same big
Right.
number. How you look at it, right? And that's what I would say is kind of the single thing is mindset will help you in every part of your life for the rest of your life in every part of the things that you do.
I could not have said that better. I really couldn't. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. For the viewers, I'm going to put a link to his Trial Lawyer's Bible, a link obviously to your website, so that lawyers can contact you. Is there any other information I should give them for contact information for you?
I would love for people to also have my personal Instagram. It's mike.alder. And if you go on YouTube, my Alder Talk is my YouTube channel. There's a lot of stuff that's there. If you subscribe, I'm always adding stuff to that too.
Yeah, and it's really good. Like you go in depth about like dealing with experts, and it's really good stuff. I don't really use YouTube that much, but I do listen to your stuff, so I love it. So definitely do that too. So I'll put that information down as well in the box as well
Great.
too. Mike, thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate it. And man, you might have to come back on when we talk about maybe experts or something
Give me a
soon.
call and always reach out too, right? We don't have to be on a podcast for you to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Sounds good.